And thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Heather Sells. There was another terrorist attack in Israel, the fourth in the last few weeks. We will bring you the latest developments, plus
we'll show you why experts warn of a possible food crisis soon.
They've got to be planting again and harvesting again. If they don't, then you're going to have a global supply problem.
Then later, we'll explore a new documentary supporting scientific evidence of heaven.
What I discovered is that there have been more than 900 scholarly studies of near-death experiences published in scientific and medical journals over the last 50 years.
All these stories and more are coming up next from the CBN Newsroom.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
And for the fourth time in just over 3 weeks, Israelis have suffered another deadly terror attack. As Chris Mitchell reports, this attack took place in the busy city of Tel Aviv, leaving 2 dead and more than a dozen wounded.
On Thursday evening, a Palestinian gunman opened fire into a crowded restaurant in the heart of one of Tel Aviv's busiest sections.
Our crew just came to the area and found a few people that just was shot. We start to help to try to save their life.
After a massive manhunt, security forces found and killed the terrorist, a 28-year-old Palestinian from the West Bank town of Jenin. Hamas praised the terrorist attack but did not claim responsibility. After the attack, Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett addressed the nation.
Dear citizens, we're in a difficult and challenging period. It may be prolonged. The second intifada lasted several years, but in the end we won. The long wave of terror of 2015 and 2016 lasted over a year, costing us 50 murders, but in the end we won. This time too, we will win.
The wave of terror attacks came just before and now during the observance of the Muslim month of Ramadan, when religiously inspired attacks often increase. After the attack, some Palestinians gave out candy in Ramallah, and in Gaza, others paraded in the street to celebrate the terror attack. In Tel Aviv, the Israeli Philharmonic interrupted their concert and played Israel's national anthem, Hatikva, the Hope. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
And now to the latest developments in Ukraine. As the devastation and the death toll continues to rise, more weapons are on the way to help Ukrainian fighters. CBN's Brody Carter reports.
Devastation is all that's left for Ukrainian locals in the northern Ukrainian city of Chernihiv. Russian forces destroyed 2/3 of the city before leaving to regroup in eastern Ukraine. Valuable possessions, crushed buildings, and cars litter the streets. The locals are in dire need of food and other help. All this as the U.S. again pointing to Russian abuses against Ukrainian citizens.
With each day, more and more credible reports of rape, killings, torture are emerging.
Atrocities and alleged war crimes in Ukraine led the United Nations General Assembly to take the unprecedented action of kicking Russia off the UN Human Rights Council Thursday. On Capitol Hill, Congress passed 2 bills to officially ban the import of Russian oil while suspending normal trade relations. Now they just need the president's signature. And in Ukraine itself, growing concerns that Russia is about to launch another large offensive in the eastern Donbass region. Those reports spurred Kyiv to call on the West to send more help.
My agenda is very simple. It has only 3 items on it. It's weapons, weapons, and weapons.
NATO countries have agreed to send additional high-tech weapons, while U.S. congressional leaders debate whether to send future assistance and holding off on payment until later.
We have not stopped, nor are we stopping providing additional security assistance. We have announcements nearly every couple of days.
Ukraine's foreign minister warns just how destructive the coming warfare could be.
The battle for Donbass will remind you of Second World War.
As the fighting continues, Ukraine refugees continue to stream into Poland. More than 4.3 million Ukrainians have now fled the war-torn country, the majority of them entering through Poland. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Ukrainian refugees are arriving at the Polish border tired and hungry. Operation Blessing is serving up hot food and drink to these weary travelers.
Hi, so it's been a week since we started cooking here in Medica, right at the border with Ukraine. on the Polish side, obviously. And so far, we've been cooking hamburgers and hot dogs, quesadillas, making obviously some hot chocolate because it's really cold right now, some chai tea, just spreading the love of our Lord Jesus and showing them that, you know, the world is here for them and we are here to care for them. So I feel very excited. I'm very, very glad that we are having the opportunity to cook for these people as many meals as we can daily. We as Operation Blessing feel very, very blessed to be here. Obviously, providing not just a warm meal, but a warm smile, just giving them the feeling of welcoming and complete safety. So I want to thank you, everyone who's been a part of this mission, who's kept them in their prayers, everyone who's been here for not just us, but for Ukrainian people. Thank you. Thank you for allowing Operation Blessing and our beautiful team to be here, spreading the love of Jesus through food. Thank you.
And you can help Operation Blessing in these disaster relief efforts. Call 1-800-700-7000 and say you want to give to Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. You can also write to us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia 23463. Just put Disaster Relief Fund in the memo line of your check. And you can text us. Just text OB Crisis to 71777. Or you can go to our websites at cbn.com or Operation Blessing at ob.org. Anything you can do to help will be appreciated. And prayer is also still urgently needed for Ukraine. You can be a part of that effort in a unique way. Go to cbn.com/prayforukraine to register for an exclusive live prayer event. It's Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And taking part will be Christian World News anchor Wendy Griffith, who will bring you the latest on how CBN's team is helping victims of the war in Ukraine and lead in prayer. Well, in other news, the Senate voted Thursday 53-47 to confirm Judge KETANJI Brown Jackson as the newest Supreme Court justice. Her confirmation goes down as bipartisan, with 3 Republicans joining Democrats to approve her. Yesterday, Democrats emphasized the historic significance of placing a black woman on the high court for the first time.
Today is also a joyous celebration in another way. In the 233-year history of the Supreme Court, never has a black woman held the title of justice. KETANJI Brown Jackson will be the first, and I believe the first of more to come.
Jackson was watching the vote with President Joe Biden as it happened. She will officially take her place on the bench when Justice Stephen Breyer retires this summer at the end of the term. Well, destroying women's sports and compromising their safety and privacy, that could be the outcome of President Biden's push to redefine the federal law called Title IX. 50 years ago, the law was established to prohibit sex-based discrimination in education. Now the administration wants to expand it to protect gender identity. The Education Department has made clear for months that it plans to change Title IX from a federal law created to protect girls' rights in school and sports to one that also protects gender identity.
It's based wholly on someone's subjective gender identity.
The Washington Post is reporting the proposed change, and legal analyst Sarah Parshall-Perry says it's no surprise given the administration's priorities. The proposal is a dramatic redefinition of the groundbreaking civil rights law designed to level the playing field for women. It would expand Title IX's meaning of sex discrimination to include sexual orientation and gender identity.
It's not only going to eliminate athletic opportunities for young girls and women, it's going to eliminate their sense of safety, security, and privacy.
Conservative legal scholars like Perry and a number of feminists agree that if men identifying as women can compete against women and share their locker rooms and bathrooms, it will erase women's sports along with their private spaces. They point to NCAA swimmer Leah Thomas, formerly Will Thomas, who became a national champion in his first season competing against women. Former Education Secretary Betsy DeVos is also concerned, calling the administration out of line. Congress has not acted, which is how our system of government requires such changes to be made, she argued recently.
I want you to know that your president sees you.
But President Biden is firmly committed to anyone who says they're changing their gender, and he wants their parents on board.
To parents of transgender children, affirming your child's identity is one of the most powerful things you can do to keep them safe and healthy.
It's why Health and Human Services is also working to redefine sex, making it illegal for healthcare providers and parents, potentially, to refuse what's known as gender-affirming care.
Parents as well who refuse to affirm those gender identities of their minor children could be deemed to be unsafe or abusive parents.
Coming up, it is a perfect storm of problems, creating potentially the biggest food crisis since World War II. See why grocery prices are soaring after this break. Inflation, supply shortages, and the war in Europe all point to a looming global catastrophe. Food experts warn a historic famine is on the horizon, with 285 million people at risk of starvation. Dale Hurd brings us the details.
It's mealtime in the nation of Yemen, but Ghalib al-Najjar isn't eating so that his children have enough food. He says he and his family live like ants or fish. We eat what we can find. Experts warn that in the months ahead, food is going to be harder to find in many more nations. A perfect storm of several problems is decimating the world food supply. It's being called the biggest food crisis since World War II. An estimated 285 million people face starvation. The head of the World Food Program, former South Carolina Governor David Beasley, says the world food supply already faced a catastrophe before the war in Ukraine.
We're so short of funds already, and now with Ukraine, we've got 50% rations for people, for example, in Yemen, Niger, 50% rations, Chad, 50% rations, and 50% don't have anything, those who are in extreme need.
In the U.S., Americans have seen food costs rise almost 10% over last year, the steepest increase in 40 years. And experts predict it will lead to an increase in malnutrition among America's poor. In the developing world, however, it's become a matter of life and death. Russia and Ukraine together produce almost 1/3 of the world's wheat, but Ukrainian farmers have been sidelined by the war, and Russia has banned exports.
They've got to be planting again and harvesting again. If they don't, then you're going to have a global supply problem.
And the war in Ukraine is only the latest of many problems to hit the world food supply. Food prices were already high from soaring inflation and fuel costs. Fertilizer prices are now 40% higher than a month ago before the invasion of Ukraine, which, along with high fuel prices, makes it too expensive for some farmers to plant crops this year.
We've never seen these type of increases in fertilizer. You're talking 300-400% increases in a 14-month period.
Add to that a drought that damaged this spring's U.S. winter wheat harvest. In China, severe flooding late last year wrecked the wheat harvest and has the communist government trying to buy up as much of the world's supply as possible. And now a growing list of nations have banned agricultural exports to other nations. Reverend Eugene Cho of Bread for the World says the U.S. needs to do more to fight global hunger, asking Congress to approve $3.8 billion in supplemental emergency funding.
But let's just talk about Afghanistan. 98% of the population do not have enough food to eat. 98%, 1 million children under the age of 5 could die from malnutrition by the end of this year.
Even Africa's wealthiest nation faces a food crisis, according to Nigerian agri-investor Imal Silva, who told us a majority of Nigerians face malnutrition.
Those that are most affected are the majority, in the lower and middle class, in the society. Those that were living below a particular level of income would feel the pinch, and that's quite a large majority.
And Beasley warns the world's food crisis could spiral into a political crisis.
You got catastrophe coming to catastrophe, so don't be surprised if you don't see destabilization in several nations over the next 6 to 9 months.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Still ahead, out-of-body experiences that medical science can't explain. A new documentary asks, could this be proof of the afterlife? Lee Strobel builds his case for heaven. As Christians, we believe in life after death. 10 years ago, author Lee Strobel set out to answer this question: is there any scientific evidence for heaven? The result, a documentary called The Case for Heaven. Recently, FaithWire.com's Billy Hallowell talked with Strobel about his new film. Take a look.
Can near-death experiences tell us anything reliable about life after death? And why should we trust what Jesus tells us about heaven and about hell? This is my case for heaven.
10 years ago, Christian author Lee Strobel nearly died. That experience put him on a path to prove the existence of life after death. Strobel first rose to prominence decades ago as an atheist and journalist trying to disprove Christianity. Instead, he found Jesus, sharing his journey and discovery in his 1998 bestseller, The Case for Christ. Strobel's new documentary, The Case for Heaven, explores his own brush with death and evidence for the afterlife. Why did you want to start diving into this study and this exploration of heaven?
Well, I almost died 10 years ago. My wife found me unconscious. She called an ambulance. I remember waking up in the emergency room and looking up at the physician. He looked down at me and he said, "You're 1 step away from a coma, 2 steps away from dying." So I lingered between life and death there for quite a while. I had a rare condition called hyponatremia, which is a severe drop in my blood sodium level. And so when you're in that position, it's a very clarifying situation to be on the edge of, you don't know if you're going to live, if you're going to die. Background's in journalism and law, so I tend to question things. And so after I recovered from that, thank God, I thought, I should really look at what the evidence is that supports the idea that there is an afterlife, that we do indeed live on. Because at a moment like that, nothing is more important than what happens after I close my eyes for the last time in this world.
As you started to dig into it and really look and explore, what most surprised you?
I tell you, I was completely surprised by the evidence for near-death experiences. I was a skeptic about it. I thought maybe it was just a lack of oxygen to the brain that caused hallucinations or something like that. And what I discovered is that there have been more than 900 scholarly studies of near-death experiences published in scientific and medical journals over the last 50 years. It's a very well-studied phenomenon. And The Lancet, which is the famous medical journal in England, carried an article that analyzed near-death experiences, said that no alternative explanation can account for this phenomenon. So I only looked at cases where we had corroboration. I kind of, from my legal background, I wanted cases where people saw things or heard things that they could not have seen or heard had they not had an authentic out-of-body experience. I'll give you one quick example. My favorite one is a woman named Maria who died in a hospital. And she described later, said, well, I was conscious the whole time. I was watching the resuscitation efforts that they were doing on my body. My spirit was kind of floating there in the hospital room. And then my spirit floated out of the hospital. And when she was revived and her spirit returned to her body, she said, oh, by the way, there's a man's tennis shoe on the roof of the hospital. And it's dark blue. It's left-footed. There's some wear over the little toe, and the shoelace is tucked under the heel. So they go up, they look, and sure enough, they found it exactly as she said. So that's the kind of corroboration I'm looking for. And in my book and in the film, we document these cases. I think it's extraordinary.
Extraordinary indeed, and timely. As culture reels from the impact of COVID-19, war, and chaos, Strobel believes there's a new generation being confronted with death and desperately seeking answers on heaven, hell, and salvation. He believes the case for heaven will help guide them on that journey, offering the evidence they need to embrace biblical truth. I'm Billy Hollowell for CBN News.
Recording artist LECRAE is partnering with a major Christian app. We will tell you all about it coming up next.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place, all day, every day. The CBN News Channel. Download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com. CBN News.
Recording artist LECRAE is partnering with Pray.com as a brand ambassador. He told the Christian Post that the app does significant work and says they really take their time and energy to make sure the resources are right. We have similar visions. They want to do good in this world. The app was launched in 2017 and is being described as one of the top apps for Christians. Well, that is it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Please remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel at any time or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories that you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or just talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope that you'll join us next time. Have a great day.